I hit the record. So I'll cut this part out of the interview, but again, thanks for doing this.
It might be the best part.
It's
What's that?
This could be
don't cut it out too fast.
Yeah,
this could be the gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
As
That's
good as it gets.
Yeah, I did watch some previous interviews with Gabriel, and he was talking. You guys were talking to someone whose son was at Gabriel's alma mater in Ireland, and you pulled a really good joke about him being a vet. That nobody knew he had been a vet as well. So,
a veterinarian. Yeah.
That was like at the end, and I was like, it really is one of the best bits of the interview is. But
well, he's very funny, so it's sort of it's quite easy to do things with him. Corey, on the other hand, is a bit of a wet noodle. So,
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. You can cut all my parts out.
Exactly.
I can actually turn my sound and video off.
Just sit there. Kind of sorted. Okay.
Sure.
So we'll go ahead and start. Welcome to our Q&A of Death of a Ladies' Man, and we're visited with Matt Bissonnette, who is the director, and Corey Marr, who's one of the producers on the film. So thank you guys so much for joining us. So we're kind of assuming everyone's already seen the film, so we can talk about things.
Everywhere has already seen the movie.
Everyone has seen it in the world. So
the whole wide world has seen the movie. So this is going to be good.
Yeah. So when the dinosaurs descend, it's really it's out of the blue.
So yeah.
And still wants to spend more time on the film by being here now with us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say how much I loved the film. I think it had this really magical kind of quality to it that kept the narrative, which can be so heavy and serious. It's so buoyant, and you kind of were just swimming in this sort of like existence with Samuel Shea. And I thought it's such a fine balance. I just thought I was really struck by how much emotion it brought up, but also so much humor and kind of empathy. And so I'm really excited to talk to you guys about how this all came together. And I know, Matt, that you'd filmed a movie about Leonard Cohen in the past. So is that correct?
Kind of. Yeah. The first movie I did just out of school with a friend of mine that I grew up called Stephen Clark, and it was called Looking for Leonard, and it was more of a kind of a Jarmushy crime caper type movie, but one of the characters had a Leonard Cohen obsession, and was sort of took place in Montreal, and at that time I think Leonard was living there, and people used to often say, "Oh, I saw him at the bagel store, or I saw him buying paint, or whatever, or at the hardware store." So it was sort of a little gag about that for folks who lived on the Main and in the city. So that kind of started out, and then we, for whatever reason, I'd have like either a song or something in every movie, just for what I'm not quite sure why. And I like his work, and there's sort of, I like to have a kind of Montreal quality to every film, even if it doesn't take place there. So it's sort of a way of kind of infusing it with, a bit of La Belle Province.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not super familiar with Leonard Cohen's music, but I did listen to Death of a Ladies' Man just this morning. And it's definitely woven into the story quite a bit. So I guess my question is, the name of the film is after a song of his. How did this kind of genesis, how did you come up with this story, and how it all came together with the music? How did that spark?
I think at the time, it maybe came out of a conversation that Corey and I had about putting some songs in the movie, because we had done a movie with a lot of music in it, and we both like music a lot, and we were sort of thinking about something. And at the time I was a single dad, and I was very interested in the relationships between fathers and sons and fathers and children, and then how family dynamics can repeat sort of generation to generation. And then, death's always sort of always with us. So that kind of just came in naturally. And when we started doing the film, one thing, when you do a movie, you want to do a movie, or I do, about real things. And you want it, and the things that are real in my life that I'm kind of aware of are sort of like, divorce and addiction and all this kind of stuff. It just sort of seems to have been around. But you want to do it in a way, the way you live your life. I mean, life is difficult, but you're always sort of trying to enjoy it and have some sort of humor and hope as you go through it. And so the question was how to infuse this sort of story that had an inherent sort of difficulty to it with that kind of thing. And I remember one time when we were making it, Gabriel turned to me and said, you know, he didn't like dancing. So he was like, why are all these dance numbers in this movie? What are we doing? And I was like, well, we're trying to put a little joy inside it. And then and we talked a little bit about it. And joy is one sort of thing, music. And I think, particularly music, it operates inherently joyfully, if you know what I mean. You can just sort of, the song will immediately lift you up, where a narrative can do it in a different kind of construct. So what we were trying to do is, though the narrative maybe didn't have joy in it inherently all the time, we wanted to you might get there in the end, but we wanted to have it earlier on. And music and dance, to a certain extent, are very kind of pure art forms in that way. You see it right away, and it gives you an immediate emotional experience. So that's kind of what, when I'm looking at cinema, when I'm looking at movies, one part I really enjoy is that you can incorporate these other sort of art forms that lend their particular quality to them. And, visuals and particular music can infuse your thing that you're doing with an immediate feeling. And I'm quite interested. I think movies are okay for ideas, but they're really good for feelings. And so I'm sort of always interested in sort of how you can at least try and elicit a certain kind of feeling. That's a super long answer to maybe much too
it's
boring
great
for what you're looking for. But anyhow.
Keep going. No, I totally feel that. I mean, because your brain is kind of processing through the movie, and you see them break into dance, and there is a joy to it, but it's also, you can kind of process the reality of things in a different way and touch on the emotions a bit.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's necessary in a movie to have a little space for people to kind of understand what's kind of been going on and think about it a little bit. And and I do have a kind of feeling that just philosophically, things that give people time to think these days, whether they go, I hate this, I'm so bored right now, or not, that might even be a good reaction. Do you know what I mean? Rather than, I think working in the entertainment field now is a kind of contradiction, in the sense you're trying to entertain people, but the world is just functioning completely to distract them. So how do you, in a distraction medium, lend time for people to think a little bit? And I think, in our own way, where that's sort of the kind of thing you're trying to do. So give people some space to think. That's another sort of thing that I think I'm thinking about, and we're thinking about when we're making the movies.
Very cool. I like it. Yeah, definitely agree. And you two, you've worked together on a few projects then.
How did years. It's been a million years.
How did this partnership develop? How did you guys start working together?
Corey?
We met at a Canadian film festival many years ago. Matt was there with Looking for Leonard, the first film that he did. I was there with a very forgettable short film that I had produced, and
I still remember it.
And we just connected, got along, and he sent me a script after for what turned into be the first film that we made together, called Who Loves the Sun. And from there we've kind of we've worked together quite a bit. This is our third film together.
That's great. And so do you kind of come aboard in the writing process too, Corey, or is it, when you latch onto a project, how does your partnership start?
He comes on sort of pre-writing. We sort of talk about various ideas, and then kind of, it's a very, very early on.
Very cool. Nice.
Next time Matt's gonna send me one that's gonna be ready to go.
You just have to flip the switch.
That's right. With the financing in place too.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, because that's not hard at all. So it sounds like you guys, yeah, of course. So I think one thing that might be interesting, since we are at a film festival, a lot of indie filmmakers, you guys have been able to produce really strong feature film. Can you give any advice? Corey, you said you started with a short film at a film festival. Any advice to kind of develop and grow to maybe your first feature narrative production?
Yeah, it's funny, like even after doing it a few times, there's lots of advice to give, but I think the best piece is like there's really no real playbook that certainly we've discovered on how to do this, right? And so it's been just a continuous learning process, and really like head down perseverance, kind of like there's got to be a way. If you hit a wall, turn the other way and keep running till you find another wall, and then pivot and do something else. But I think it starts with we've worked on a lot of things that haven't gotten this far, right? And I think it's when you find something that really means something to you in a certain way, it's like you cross a line at some point, and we certainly did with this one, where it was not going to happen, if that makes sense. Like it was just sort of like full determination, and obviously what comes with that is like great personal sacrifices and all the hardships that come along with like really getting something like this together. But it's fundamental belief in the thing itself, and then trying to find the best, work with the best people you can find. It's put a team together that are amazing at their craft, right? Filmmaking is it's a group effort, and that's what makes it so incredible to participate in and to watch happen. And when you have that sort of it's sort of like that magic of bringing people together to make something with a shared vision. I can say it's possible. You can make it happen. You can get it done.
Well, I'm glad you guys did for this one. And one thing I was going to say is, once you had your script down, your casting was incredible. Can you talk about how that kind of came together? Because obviously Gabriel Byrne, I can't imagine another person playing this role. He's phenomenal. And then all the supporting cast were so incredibly strong and effective. Can you talk about the casting process a bit?
Yeah, casting, we had a hard time at first trying to figure out who to cast in the lead. And we had a couple of ideas before Gabriel that just didn't make sense, just didn't kind of work either on our end or their end, but not many. And then we thought of Gabriel. And at that point, actually, the script didn't have the Irish component. And we then decided, oh, he should do it. And then we sort of brought in the Irish part. And that kind of made sense. My kind of background is French, Canadian, and Irish. So it all kind of, when things work, they work, if you know what I mean. And that's, so once Gabriel came in, he and I sat down and had lunch, and it was clear that he understood the script in a way I was understanding it, and then had brought things to it that I hadn't really been thinking about, and then it was gonna, that was gonna work. And then from then on, I think every person we asked said yes once Gabriel sort of came in. And we had been thinking about a number of the actors already. So that was kind of easy, actually, to sort of to put that together. So it was just one of those things that I think once something starts to get going, it seemed to come together rather easily. The financing was quite difficult. Corey could maybe talk a little bit more about that, but the casting actually was not that painful.
I would add, like, working with Gabriel was it was a phenomenal experience, dream come true kind of thing. And I guess another piece of advice for sort of people that are trying to put their films together, when we all know that like cast helps drive financing and market support and everything else, and yet it's the hardest thing to do, right? Hardest thing to attach an actor, certainly at a certain level early on. And I guess it's really being honest with the project that you have, and really thinking about like, it's got to make sense to not only us, right? I mean, there's many people that you want to work with, but it's got to make sense for the other person too. And I think probably to a fault of ours, when we started this process, I think that was a lesson that we learned. It's just like we were trying to just shoot pretty high for the sake of like, oh, we need somebody famous in this thing that's a great actor that's going to help finance the film. And then I think as we moved along and sort of realized, but it's also got to make sense for the movie, and it's got to make sense for this particular thing at the time we were doing it. that was, I mean, maybe it sounds obvious that I'm saying it, but it was something that we definitely learned through the process.
Yeah, I think, and the only thing I'd say about people sending scripts out is, I think what you really need to understand is exactly what Corey said, is you need to hit the right person at the right time. There might be reasons that are going on with them that have nothing to do with you or your movie, and so it doesn't work out. And you just sort of have to eventually, once the right person slots in, again, I'll just say that, once the right person sort of comes together, it starts with the creative. So if you have the right person to play that role, then everything else seems to fall into place once that meshes. And once sort of Gabriel is, I think people could see the movie once he was involved, if you know what I mean. It was easy to understand him as that role. He was just sort of really able to inhabit that character and to sort of bring that character to life in a way that that was much larger than anything I had in mind.
Yeah. And so when did you rewrite the Ireland aspect into it? Or was it as simple as changing location, or did you really have to go back through the script and
it wasn't very difficult at all. No, everything was sort of already in place. So that all kind of worked out. That wasn't that hard. And I think it was after, I can't remember. It was sort of right around the time of meeting Gabriel and sort of like talking to him, getting a sense of it. I knew his voice, but getting a kind of sense of his voice. And that's another kind of thing, when you're writing a script, once you have the actor, sometimes you do a pass when you have their voice in your head, just to kind of accommodate it a little bit more to them.
Well, it was just perfect. I can't imagine it any better than what it was. So well done.
Thank you.
I also remember, like, after spending a bit of time in Ireland, doing a bit of a there's a bit of a tweak done for some of the colloquialisms of, like, just the speech that, things that we would hear living there that were sort of phrases that weren't, necessarily things that we say in North America, but are quite common there.
Yeah, it was great. You guys did a wonderful job. And Samuel O'Shea, I feel like his character, he's so lovable and endearing, and yet he's got addiction issues. We kind of hint that he's not the best father and maybe the best husband. But yeah, he is so lovable and endearing, and you really feel for him and his experience. You're really on it with him. I'm curious it's hard to get that on the page, I think. And I know, like, had great casting, but it's on the page, you've got your actor, and then you're shooting it. How did you kind of keep that balance of keeping his character so kind of buoyant and lovable and endearing while he's going through all these kind of reckonings, I guess, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, I'd have to say a lot of that was Gabriel. Gabriel really thought we had a number of very good talks about who we thought the character was. And I think we both had a pretty good understanding of that person's failings, but then also their perhaps inherent kind of decency. And you know what I mean? And I think, and whatever struggles that they were struggling with. So I think we had a pretty good understanding of that. And then, listen, Gabriel's just a very charming person. And he's a very funny person. And he's a very loving person. And he's a very kind of fundamentally decent human being, at least that, to the extent that I know him. And I think that just comes across. So, and I think he had a good understanding of how you can have many shortcomings and still be a decent human being. And I think, that's a big part of what one thing we're trying to get across, or just sort of the feeling you're trying to get across is, that things aren't really black and white. I think there's a tendency, seems particularly prevalent now, to live in a black and white world. And, I think Leonard Cohen's got a line about, thank God, my world's gray, or something like that. I can't remember the exact line, but the world essentially is gray. And I think, that's what you're trying to project, that happy thought.
You're not wrong, though, to talk about the words on the page, because I think in all of Matt's films, there's this particular kind of humor and a particular kind of a tone, I guess, that some people can read it from the page, and other people, you know, just, it's more difficult. And then, you know, you come and watch the films, and they make sense in a way, in that way. And you know, casting is such a huge part of making those words come to life. And it was certainly always, you know, I think a requirement of this character, of whoever was going to play this character, that had the ability to be everything, you know. And Gabriel is certainly, yeah, I mean, you know, I also can't imagine somebody else doing this role.
Yeah, he's amazing. And you kind of, Matt, you kind of hit on, in today's culture, you know, the cancel culture, everyone's so quick to like sweep somebody off the map, essentially. Do you think, like, I think when I was reading kind of your director's statement about this film, you were talking about, you know, he is kind of this is the ageless story of a doomed Lothario. It's not a new story, like, idea, but do you feel like kind of these Samuel O'Sheas are going to have to be told in a different way in kind of the wake of cancel culture, Me Too? Do you feel like there's sort of there's a different way we're going to have to like bring these characters to light?
You know, I don't really know about other films or other books. I mean, I can say in this particular, and we wrote this before Me Too. This, you know, I wrote this script 8 years ago. And one thing that I'm interested in masculinity, you know, kind of how men get along, not just with men, but with women. That's sort of, because it's my perspective. You know, I mean, I have made films about women, but it's just where, you know, I'm a man, so I have a certain kind of perspective on it. And what I was trying to do is, you know, take a look at the ideas that were inside the person's head, but like not throw the person out, if you know what I mean. And because, you know, a lot of, you know, you still have meaningful relationships with your children. Flawed people still do all these other kinds of things. And I was also kind of looking at how, you know, how a bad idea can lead someone down a certain path in a kind of way. And then, you know, Samuel's coming out at a certain time where there are certain kind of ideas that maybe just aren't that great, you know, that seemed particularly, you know, popular to us at the time. You know, there's certain ideas that were floating around in the 60s and the 70s and the early 80s that were, you know, prevalent in the entire culture. And maybe they weren't such great ideas. And there is you know, a better way of doing things just for everyone. You know, I think also, I think, you know, it's not, I don't think anyone's a victim in this particular movie, but I think that Samuel is a slave to a certain extent to some, you know, he's got an emptiness inside him, and then he's formed in a culture that says, here's the stuff you should pour into you. This stuff's going to make you, this is going to fix you. Here's the junk that's going to fix you. And he spends his entire life trying to use those things to fix himself, and they continue to cause him more difficulty. I mean, it's fairly simple. And I, you know, listen, I'm a kind of a believer that life in a certain way is kind of simple. You know, it's sort of, you talk to anybody, eventually they're going to tell you, here's a thing that happened to me when I was young, and it's a definitive experience. And then they're probably going to say, I've transcended it. But then if you look at their life, and I think you should transcend your, you know, where you come from, you should transcend your difficulties, but they continue to be shaped by them. And their life is sort of in reaction to that. And the mechanisms that they use to fix themselves are often the ones that are being, you know, touted by their particular culture at that time. So the ideas that people are using now to fix themselves, I think in 20 years, we're going to look back and go, maybe those weren't such great ideas. Do you know what I mean? There's all that, it's just an ongoing cycle. Now that just happens to be my view. You know, people may not subscribe to that particular view, but that seems to be everything I've seen so far, as the length of time I've been on this planet, that seems to be how it's going down. So anyhow, that's again, a fairly long answer.
That's great. No, I think it's great. And I do think there's so many universal elements existing in Samuel that, you know, we can all kind of identify with, man, women, you know, different ages, different cultures.
I hope so. You know, I do. You know, I think, I think that, you know, there's an aspect of that kind of behavior that women do as much as men, you know, and often in the same ways. So.
Well, absolutely. And one relationship I really loved was his relationship with his children, and sort of how maybe cyclical addiction in family, you know, hereditary addiction showed up with Samuel when he had, you know, he had this like parent's instinct or something that his daughter was in trouble maybe, and he goes to her front door and she's like, and he literally kind of just escorts her out of the house. That was one of my favorite moments because I feel like it was him being the best of himself and knowing what to do. Can you kind of talk about the role of addiction and how it plays out here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll say like I'm sober. I've been sober like 7, 8 years now, and I do think again, you know, a lot of simple things are true, and addiction is a family disease, and it's been passed down since, I don't know, since the first grape got stomped on, I assume, and you know, it's a cycle that can be broken, obviously. And the thing that I think is sort of quite redeeming, what I think one of Samuel's great qualities is his love for his children, and his, you know, wanting to put himself before them when he kind of comes to. I think one of the terrible things about addiction is it gets in the way of your better selves. You make decisions where you put yourself first, and in situations where you probably shouldn't. So yeah, I think the thing with addiction, what I personally think is that the way through addiction is the ability to live comfortably in reality. And sort of one thing the film's kind of looking at is, you know, obviously by making illusion literal and material, the idea that once you discard illusion, then life actually is, reality is better than illusion, I guess, is something that I was hoping would come across in the movie. And I think that the way through addiction was, in my experience, has been to accept reality in favor of whatever particular illusion or fantasy that you were kind of playing out in your life. And then once you're kind of involved in reality, life seems to get better. You know, you're kind of then dealing actually with the actual relationships in your lives, you know, whatever relationship that is, like to your family, to other people, to the environment. You know, if you can't discern reality, I mean, it's always going to be tricky. Reality is a slippery fish. But if you're not even trying, if you're sort of, you know, somewhere getting high, you're not going to find it. And if you can't find reality, then you're kind of lost. And I think, you know, the way I think addiction is treated, hopefully in the film, is that all the characters are returning to a kind of reality when they move past it. So, yeah.
That's great. Well, and so you're coming from reality, and also in the film, there's these really surprise characters, like Frankenstein and the Tiger Woman, which when I saw, I mean, the imagery itself is really just enjoyable, and it kind of puts you in Samuel's position in a way that you kind of unexpectedly are kind of going through this, seeing these images with him, wondering if they're real or not. When did you guys decide to go all in with like the imagery, with like, yep, we're gonna have a Frankenstein, we're gonna have a tiger lady? How did you guys get that on the page? And
Corey, that was pretty early on, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. That was always a construct of sort of watching the detritus of this man's mind kind of play out in front of him. That was there from the pretty early days.
I think, again, that kind of, the nice thing about cinema is that obviously it's a visual medium, and you can incorporate these kind of things into it. And so that's just sort of a fun thing about making movies. It's fun on the day, and it's a little hectic to get everyone made up, but it's sort of a fun thing to do. And it also creates a certain, because we do everything pretty much in camera. There's, I think, 1 or 2 visual effects. I think the truck and the geese were visual effects, but everything else is in camera. And it creates a certain kind of tone also for the film when you kind of do things in camera and have the folks there on the day. It's fun. It's enjoyable.
Yeah, and I love the scene too with the dancing and people lip syncing to the Cohen song with the AA group, and then they go outside. I thought that was just amazing. It kind of seems like almost like he's coming out of that kind of fantasy world and his feet are in reality a bit more.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's actually kind of what that scene's sort of about. And I just think there's a certain quality at an AA meeting that I don't think you can get to by having people talk. And I thought a dance might be a kind of way of getting a little bit of a feeling. What else? There's something I was going to say. I can't remember. Oh yeah, I think one thing I remember someone saying early on about the not me or Corey, someone watching the film or some was like, well, you should announce the visions more, like change put them in black and white or something. And we were kind of like, no, the whole idea is that the audience is in the same place as him. And I think one thing that I was always comfortable with the film is it doesn't really matter to me particularly whether it's real or not, or what's happening is real or not, or I wanted the audience to be in the same sort of uncomfortable position a little bit with the character, because there's an unsteadiness to sort of addiction and a bit of mental illness that I wanted to kind of come across. Anyhow, that's sort of why there's no sort of treatment of them. They just sort of walk in and out. That was kind of the thinking.
Well, I just love it. I can't tell you enough
cool.
how much I love it. Yeah. And yeah, I feel like, I just really appreciate this film. I feel like it kind of exists in this balance, this kind of paradox between like kind of the heartache and chaos of life, and then also just the love and joy in it. And I feel like you guys somehow like brought all those elements together and had them coexist, and it's just a beautiful piece. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much for saying that.
And so you guys have distribution in Canada, is that correct? And hopefully soon here in the US, is that correct? North America?
Yeah, it's been, sales have been really great for the film so far. I mean, taking this thing out during the pandemic has been, like every filmmaker out there, it's been really, really heartbreaking and difficult in many ways. Matt saw it for the first time with an audience like last week at a film festival. I have never seen this film with an audience in real life, and thankfully that's going to happen in a couple weeks up here in Toronto, which I'm excited about. But it's gotten like, it had a really big release theatrically in Australia. It was released in Taiwan. Germany's going to release in the spring. It's kind of doing its thing. In the States, it's still playing some festivals, and we are working on a wider distribution deal for the US, and we're very, very hopeful it's going to happen soon. As filmmakers, we want the film out there as wide as possible.
Christmas Day.
Christmas Day.
Christmas Day.
And Matt, what was it like seeing it with the audience, seeing the reactions?
It was nice. It was fun.
Yeah.
The film seemed to play well. It was good to see it. I hadn't seen it large either in quite a while, so it was a nice experience. My brother was there too, who plays Brendan in the film. So he just lives nearby here in LA. So we both went down. That was kind of fun to do with him. So yeah, it's all, I love going to festivals. I would have loved to have been out there in Portland. It's so fun to just kind of see it with other people, because that's really, what movies really are. I mean, I watch them at home too, but movies exist in movie theaters, and they exist as a community experience and a communal experience. And yeah, the sooner that happens again, the happier I'll be.
I think a lot of us will, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, we missed having you guys in person, but we're so grateful that you could be here virtually today.
Thank you for thank you very much for programming the film, and for everyone who watched it. We really appreciate it.
It's a great film, and I'll be, once it gets distribution here in the US, let us know, and we'll share that with our social media friends. But yeah, thanks again so much. You guys can catch Death of a Ladies Man through November 8th with the Portland Film Festival, and then stay tuned for where you can watch it on demand or in theaters, hopefully, coming up soon. So thanks, you guys.
Yeah,
all right.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.